if we're talking about consumers in general, I think one of the questions came on the chat here earlier, where do you need to have a government issued ID? We touched on that, but I think I just want to add, there's a lot of services that are available today that do provide these attestations of valid IDs, whether it's a driver's license or a passport. So you have on Fido or Trulio, there's a lot of these companies that exist today, and a lot of these companies are growing significantly right now just because of the need to do these verifications over the internet, right? And I think, Ryan, you mentioned also having some complexities dealing with folks over the internet where you have to execute contracts, and how do you know it's the actual person that's providing these signatures? With everything that's happening right now, do you think that it's really going to expedite the need to have verifiable credentials? And are you guys seeing movements in the health space and stuff like that?
I mean, certainly right now we've got one CEO of a credit union screaming that he didn't prioritize things because his staff don't want to touch anything that members have touched. Members don't want to touch anything that staff have touched, and guess how they're walking into the branch and identifying themselves? They're handing devices back and forth. So yeah, we're seeing huge cases. The amount of fraudsters are also well aware right now that the gates have been kind of opened a little bit, and they're diving in. So now they're looking to the Onfidos of the world. The MyTax is more of an older school in the banking industry, to try to help solve that, to try to help just solve the fraud. That's what their number one concern is right now, is the fraud of giving you something digital. But once they get digital, now they're happy to have that digital piece, but they have to be very careful, because once they let you in, they don't want to necessarily give you the keys of the kingdom.
So there's, I think, two parts to that question. One is that on the question of source of an identity attestation. I mean, I'm from the government, so the government is the only legitimate issuer of identity attributes. It's just that simple. Nevertheless, we haven't stood up to that task just yet in full. And so there are these interim solutions. So again, that's not wrong. It's just the verifier of that identity attestation needs to make a trust decision. They have to decide how much risk are they willing to take on. If you can prove that the identity attributes come from a government issuer and that it's backed by law and it's backed by the trustworthy processes of government identity verification, then your risks are lowered as a verifier of those attributes. Anything else introduces more risk. That's fine. Like, I mean, it's maybe less than just, obviously it's less than just, random attributes. But what we'd like to get to is, the authoritative sources of person registration, legal registration, land registration, so that those foundational attributes can be put into play by people and businesses, around the world. Part two is, on the problem that Daryl was talking about, like is, physical passing of credentials, and the chance of infection and so forth and so on. I mean, we've in fact will be demonstrating today the beginnings of a solution that could help, for example, getting essential workers back on the move so that we can reboot our economy. Really what they need to be able to do is to gather up a collection of credentials from various authoritative issuers and be able to present that to gain safe entry. So I can show quickly a share screen again and situate that for you to show exactly the kind of thing that this technology can approach, this technology and governance approach can enable. So here we have a trust triangle where we have on the purple icon, the issuers. So issuers there is a new service we're proposing called the Essential Services Gateway. The health gateway where you can get your personal health information in BC, emergency management, life labs. These are issuers issuing data to essential workers who then present it to these kinds of places, anywhere where you need safe entry or to interact, whether it's a bank teller, the Sûreté de Québec at the bridge in Ottawa to get to Gatineau, a work camp for the LNG facilities in BC. You can, everywhere where there is one of these. This is our current solution, right? A visitor logbook. Well, how does that help us with contract tracing? That's a tough one. So we have designed very quickly, since Friday, my team put together 6 issuers that represent the ability for an essential service business owner to register their business as an essential service and invite their workers to come in and get a credential that indicates the service they're issuing or they're performing. They can go to their health gateway, they can go to the medical lab and get their credential. And then on the other side, a service that allows an entry point controller, any one of those places I mentioned, long-term healthcare facility, to generate a verification point using a QR code they can tape on the wall and a private web page that their security guard will get the results of that. And it's, again, it's a simple kind of a situation where we can quickly instrument our processes with digitally secure approaches and provide a service to help our economy get back up and running. It's something that I can demonstrate, and if people are interested, we could come back and perhaps do another seminar or something. We could see how that goes with our health management. We think it's a very powerful model for quickly bringing trust to situations that need it.
Do you guys think there's value, there's monetization that's possible from the issuer standpoint? If I'm going to take the effort and become a trusted party and start issuing credentials?
Totally.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, John, I think one of the things that we've talked about is if I had an equivalent to a BC service card or in Ontario, my Ontario driver's license credential, the government may or may not want to take money on, that's their choice. But when I issue a credential, for example, one of the cases we were talking about yesterday when we met Ryan, imagine if there was an insurance company standing behind Daryl O'Donnell, acting as a business person, as a director in a company, interacting with Ryan at Denton's, signing off on contracts, except I'm doing it digitally. If I'm using a credential, that insurance company may have said, hey, listen, I only accept a national or provincial driver's license or passport to get up to, as a starting point. I'm going to send private detectives out to find out about you. I'm going to talk to your bank and you're going to let me because you're as a director. We're going to have a huge bar. If I walked up with that credential, how much, Ryan, would Denton's pay on a multi-billion-dollar deal? A lot. Because you're going to incur those costs again. So yeah, these credentials, and what's really cool is that can be paid for totally privacy respecting. You don't necessarily know it's Daryl O'Donnell. You just know that I'm an officer authorized to sign for that, and it was me.
I mean, I sort of see our job as government is to, drive risk out of citizens' lives and business lives. And we do that by providing, the foundational aspects of the economy, right? Like it's government law that creates contracts' ability to be executed. And that's driven out of the legal entity registries, I don't think that charging a citizen for being able to for them to be able to have access to their identity attributes attested to by government, like I don't see a charge for that, or them being charged to use those attributes. You don't get charged to use your driver's license or your BC services card today, but I certainly do see how that underpins the economy, So let's fire up the economy. Like, let's get at it. Come and help us. Bring your developers, bring your governance folks. Let's do it. Stop waiting. We're ready.
Going back to Daryl's comments, as a lawyer, I'm trying to do these large multi-billion-dollar transactions over the computer. I talked to my accounting friends. They're trying to do some very complicated stuff over the computer. And the reality is, historically, and it's only been in the last 6 or 7 years, everything was done face-to-face. There would be closings within boardrooms with hundreds and hundreds of documents within people to sign, live. And so, to your point, right now, we don't have a lot of technology solutions that allow us to do that while still mitigating the risk. Question, I guess, Daryl, when you're talking about the ability for some of the issuers to monetize some of the data and some of the KYC steps they've already taken, do you think that's going to create the proper incentive to make sure that when their technology solutions to deal with a specific issue they have within their organization, they're going to say to themselves, well, not only do we want to solve the problem we have for our particular organization, but recognizing that we may be able to monetize this information with other processes and solutions with other third parties. And as a result, it makes sense for us to do it in an interoperable manner where it's not just solving one problem, it can be used in multiple other areas that we can make some money off of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now that that's being done. I can show you services are used in the finance industry that if I give me your personal email, and I will tell you a social score on how trustable that email is. Because if it's been sitting at Gmail since 2009, I know there's something there. If it's 7 days old, you are now suspicious. So we're already doing that. What's wrong about the situation right now is you probably had no idea that was happening and you got nothing out of it. Whereas if I can sit there and say, hey, listen, I carry a piece of identity that is one, insured for liability and stuff, but behind it, there are services that you know you can trust. There's a government who's issued real identity. Here's which email validator service would you like to pay for? You can do all of that through a single type of transaction. And you don't have to worry about the complexity behind that scene. You just get the data you want, and you don't have to hold on to the data afterwards or worry about that your personal data is sitting with 150 million other people ready to be stolen somewhere.
Okay, thank you to John, Daryl, Ryan for being on this call today. I think this was an amazing conversation. I think we could probably go on for hours on these types of conversations. I think we all agree that there are so many possibilities that are now available and problems that can be solved using these types of technologies. I would say the only thing that's missing is people. Like, people need to start pushing and start joining us and join this movement. So if anyone is looking to get into the space or has ideas or whatever, I'm sure anyone on this call here would be very happy to talk about it. So please join the movement.